Thank you, Chairman. Secretary Nielsen, Secretary Johnson said in his testimony just now that he agreed with the committee's recommendations. Do you share that view?
I do, yes. And as I said in my opening remarks, I look forward to working with you all on implementing them. As you know, some of them aren't DHS, so I will be happy to advocate and support efforts throughout government.
Thank you. Secretary Johnson, I know hindsight's obviously 2020, but if looking back, knowing what you know now, what might have you done different or advocated differently in the run-up to the 2016 election?
Well, the thing that I advocated for most strongly and that others, obviously including the President, agreed with was prior to the election, we needed to inform the American people about what we saw. Some people say we should have done so sooner, but it was not an easy decision. With the benefit of 2 years hindsight, it does seem plain, given the testimony in this room last month, that the Russian effort has not been contained, it has not been deterred. In my experience, superpowers respond to sufficient deterrence and will not engage in behavior that is cost prohibitive. Plainly, that has not occurred, and more needs to be done. With the benefit of hindsight, the sanctions we issued in late December have not worked as an effective deterrent, and it's now on the current administration to add to those and follow through on those.
So do you think, for example, having a very clear, articulated cyber doctrine would be an important part of sending that message of deterrence?
Yes, I agree with that, yes.
Secretary Nielsen, are you concerned that over a year into this administration, and despite the urging of people on both sides of the aisle on multiple committees, that we still don't have a clear administrative doctrine that draws some, that says to the Russians or others that there will be consequences if you cross this line into our elections?
Apologies. I agree with your comments yesterday at the press conference, sir. As you know, we have an executive order 13800 that requires us to develop just that. Working with the intel community, I look forward to supporting their efforts. It does need to be whole of government. As the Secretary is saying, we have sanctions, but we need to continue to look at diplomats. We need to look at indictments. We need to look at what we can do under OFAC. It needs to be very clear that there are consequences when countries meddle in our affairs.
I don't disagree that it needs to be whole of government, but one of my concerns is that no one's saying the buck stops here. We keep hearing whole of government. We heard it in our worldwide threats hearing recently. But someone has to take the responsibility to make this happen. How many cabinet meetings have been focused on the whole of government strategy to make sure that in 2018 this doesn't happen again?
We have had a number of them. We actually have a number coming up, but I take your point. I'm a very strong advocate of making it very clear who has the lead within the federal government for this particular issue.
How important is it? You know, one of my concerns is that we won't be able to get state and local officials to take the Russian cyber threat or other cyber threats seriously unless they consistently hear from the highest levels of government that this is real, that their systems are truly at risk, that they need to prepare. Director Nielsen, do you have the support you need from the White House to persuade those officials to take this seriously?
I do, yes. And I think one of the lessons we've learned is to make sure that those messages go far and wide. So I've briefed the Homeland Security advisors, I've briefed governors, in addition to the state election officials and secretaries of state. But to your point, within the states, because of our decentralized system, it's very important that everyone at senior levels understands the threat and is briefed in.
Would it help if the president were to simply acknowledge that this happened in 2016?
Yes, sir. I think he has said that it's happened. The line that he's drawing is that no votes were changed. That doesn't mean there's not a threat. It doesn't mean we need to do more to prepare.
Secretary Johnson, how, in your view, how important is it for the president to articulate and acknowledge that this happened so that people take it seriously?
Very. The President of the United States is the most visible American, maybe the most visible person on the planet. And the things he says and does are watched very, very closely. So I would agree with that.
Thank you, Chairman.